We're celebrating the 10th anniversary of our city, but there's something else that I want to do, and I want to introduce to you Sherelyn Pedigo. Sherelyn is the great-great-granddaughter of Edward Pedigo, the founder and the namer of Damascus. So I'm not going to say anything more. I'm going to give the microphone to Sherelyn.
Hi, I'm Sherelyn Pedigo. I'd like to know, can you hear me back there in the very back? I'll kind of pretend this is an ice cream cone and keep it close to my mouth, so it's much closer than Steve did. I wanted to start out by thanking you for coming out on a sunny day, this warm day. I came over from Tillamook. That's where I live now. But my heart's always in Damascus because in addition to your 10th anniversary as a city, I figured out the math, and Edward and Lettice Pedigo, my great-great-grandparents, came here 160 years ago this year. And they came from the Oregon Trail and then landed here in Damascus on the Clackamas River. And a lot of people have asked me and wondered, well, why are we named Damascus? That's a very strange name for Oregon, coming all the way over the Oregon Trail. But you do find a lot of biblical names at that point in time. So I'm going to be talking about if we could do some time traveling back to 1854. That's the year that we have the grandparents and their little kids, plus their married kids, coming all with them as a group across the Oregon Trail. And when they landed here, one of the first things that my great-great-grandfather Edward was looking for was really good, moist red clay. He was a potter, just like the potters in Damascus, Syria, where they go and have archaeologists dig up all of this pottery and everything. I have read that Oregonians regard more highly the bean pots and jars of Edward Pedigo than they do the archaeological evidence for cities over in Damascus, Syria. And there have been archaeologists out at my great-great-grandfather's homestead. My friend Dale, who drove me over from Tillamook today, I thank him very much, is going to, because of Steve Spinett's help, and the Oregon Historical Society, we have figured out where that homestead is located. So we're leaving after this party, and we're going to head on out to the homestead, drop in, and say, hello, I'm coming back from 1854 to celebrate my grandparents' arrival in Oregon, and do you think you would let me walk around and see, as I have 2 times before, dropped in on the owners, and they have welcomed me with open arms each time, to think that a descendant of the person who got the Oregon donation land claim would come back after 160 years and say, how is it going? Are the trees still growing? Are we getting still water out of that wonderful spring that had that? He said in a letter, one of the things that I have that you guys don't have is letters from 1855, and in that letter it described what the donation land claim looked like at that point in time. Edward Pedigo here had written to his brother in Texas. The Pedigos spread out all over the South during the Civil War, or before the Civil War. And so he said that there was delicious water that came out of this spring for him, his animals, and mostly for, he had a spinning wheel to create the pottery that he needed to survive because he wasn't able to make any money. It's kind of funny. John Foster, who you drive up Foster Avenue here, John Foster told everybody, the first waves of immigrants, that the big thing to do is buy apples here, buy an orchard and plant as many apples as you can. Well, he told too many people to do that. And my brother, or my Edward, my great-great-grandfather said, by the time everybody got their apples cashed in, you could make no more money to go out and pick the apples and bring them in because everybody was glutted with the apples. So that didn't go over too good, and it was always great that he had his pottery business to fall back on. So the pottery was one of the reasons. The second reason given, and this actually came from the Committee for the Future of Damascus. It's something that your city has at one point in the past printed out that I got a hold of. And it talked about all of the roads that lead to and out of Damascus. Damascus was a crossroad for the Oregon Trail. Once the Fosters and Barlow had cut around the Mount Hood, they had to come, the first farm they came to was John Foster's, and they were so happy to finally see some civilization that he was able to sell, buy, and trade anything with the newcomers, but also Foster was an evangelist for a Christian movement that brought him here called the Restoration Movement. So in Christian love and kindness, just like McLaughlin, he offered food, clothing, shelter, anything he could to help these dilapidated, hungry, thirsty, poor souls who finally made it across the Oregon Trail. So they came to his house first, and then they made it on into Oregon City to get their land claims. So one of the reasons given in that brochure was that Edward Pedigo named it Damascus because of its crossroads. Just like in Damascus, Syria, there was a lot of trading. And so any town that you see that has lots of crossroads in it becomes a place where a lot of business is being done and trading, because you have the roads to come in, the roads to come out. There's just always that element to it. Well, that brochure said nothing about what we as Pedigos have believed over the centuries of generations. And I find that this book, Christians on the Oregon Trail, helped me a lot because it did specifically identify the Pedigos, and also John Fisher, who was the very first postmaster here in Damascus. It has a whole section on Damascus and Clackamas County and how your first pioneers were coming in waves of migrations together because they wanted to bring the light of Christ to the Oregon Valley. And I'm sorry to say that that light was stymied because what happened is the Clackamas Indians, like the Tillamook Indians, were all rounded up and put on a reservation in order for our forefathers to get the land they did. And so I would like to publicly apologize for that problem, that racial problem that still exists today, and that the Native Americans have a hard time receiving the gospel because it got them nothing but kicked off their land. And so there's healing going on, I see, among Christian Indians today. So I wanted you to know that the Clackamas Indians were herded up too, so that the land could be cleared here. But then when the Christian people came in, their main goal was to help believers drop their denominational little, well, you know, I'm a Baptist, or I'm a Presbyterian, or I'm a Methodist. My family was a part of what they called the Restoration Movement, and they wanted to restore the unity to the body of Christ, to people love each other across whatever denominational lines they had. So that's one of the driving forces that they had, and people were very receptive to that. So the story, and I don't expect you all to know that some of you remember on the road to Damascus, Saul was a violent man, angry, and he was riding his horse out in the desert, just like the people who had left the Civil War behind them. They were so full of hate and animosity towards each other. The North and the South had fought each other, and they were coming out west to try to start over again. Well, my great-grandfather's meditating on all of this because his brother was in Texas and his family was divided by the Civil War. So he was thinking of all of the pain and the battles and the things that had gone on. And he was, as he meditated on that, he came up to the old first store, and the old-timers were sitting around saying, "We've been wondering, Brother Pedigo, what could we name this town? We're going to put in the post office. It needs a legal name." And he said, "Well, when I came to the Promised Land, the Uncle Sam promised me my donation land claim, and I think that the name Damascus is the best because just like Saul saw that blinding light in the sky, and his horse bucked, and it threw him off his horse. He was blind and helpless, and he was out to get Christians to throw them into prison in Damascus. But now, here he is, lame and blind and needy, and he has to have someone lead him around. He's not in control anymore. And so the Lord spoke to a Christian and said, "Go to Saul and lay your hands on him, and his sight will return. But I'm going to show him how much he has to suffer for my name's sake." So it happened, and they couldn't believe it. It's like Osama bin Laden, becomes a born-again type of Christian. Who would believe that? For him to become a peacemaker after all of the pain. I mean, it's very similar analogy there. So Saul, after he saw the light had said to him, "Quit persecuting me." And Saul had said to him while he was laying on the desert floor and blind, "Well, who are you?" And then he said, "Well, I am Jesus. And every time you persecute one of my people, you persecute me. So you go on into the city of Damascus, and I will tell you what you're going to do from there." And like I said, Saul was not used to giving or receiving orders. He was used to giving the orders, not receiving them. But he did. He was blind. He was needy. He had to follow those orders in order to receive his sight. And he did. And he had a turnaround. And now more than half of our New Testament Bible was written by this former angry man who was out to kill Christians. And he becomes a defender of the faith. I mean, if he can do that with somebody like Osama bin Laden or Saul, what can he do in our lives if we will let the light of Christ shine on us? Thank you. That's what my great-great-grandparents brought, was the light of Christ, and that's how Damascus got its name. Your candle out here is a symbol of the light of Christ. He said, "I'm the light of the world." So, forgive me if I've talked too much about the faith, but it's how you all got your name.
Thank you for coming all the way out here and telling us the story of your... That's real life. That's historic. It's real life experience. That's why we're called Damascus. That's very real.